Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Pit Yakka Crack. This is one of our off-the-cuff episodes. I'm joined by my co-host Stuart Brightwell. Hi Stuart.
Hi everybody.
Stu, what do you think if tonight we just talk about football? We've got the Premier League season starting at the weekend. We've got the Championship. It already started. We can talk about Borough's win. So are you up for a bit of crack with football?
100%. It's been a long time coming. 3 months, 4 months off without footy is an absolute nightmare. So it's just good to be able to chat about it and be ready for the new season. There's nothing better than when the new season starts. I'm really looking forward to the Premier League especially. So yeah,
I know I'm like a kid, but I'm at the point now where I'm getting that excited. It's starting to make me feel a bit like, a bit overwhelmed with it
definitely.
all, with Sunderland being back in the Premier League and the competition being back on, and the rivalry with Newcastle's there. So it's going to be a great season, I think. And I'm not expecting amazing things from Sunderland, as you and I have spoken before. You just want to stay up, but yeah. So let's get kicked off then. Let's do Championship first because they've already started there. And just before we start, did you see the goal last night, Gustavo Hamer?
Unbelievable. He's a top player here. I thought in the playoff final against Sunderland, especially first half, I thought he was a menace to Sunderland.
Yeah.
I spoke to a guy months and months ago, and he said the best player outside. This was well before Sheffield United got anywhere near the top four. It was early on the season. And he said it was the best player outside the Premiership at the moment, Gustavo Hamer. And then when I seen him in the final, I thought, but when you look at him athletically, he doesn't look. He's just really stocky. He doesn't look like an athlete, but he can cover the ground. He's technically outstanding. He's got that ability to play at the top level. I'm not certain athletically he could manage the Premier League, but his goal was sensational.
And there's got to be something because I'm the same. I watched him at the Stadium of Light, and then I watched him on the telly when we were away at Sheffield United, and he's absolutely outstanding. And I would have thought a Premier League club would have been in for him, or a European club, one of the French sides or something like that. So that there must be something that they're not seeing. And maybe it is that. Maybe it's the physicality that they think he may not be able to handle in the Premier League or one of the other top flight leagues.
Mm-hmm. I just think the position he plays in, it's one of them, he doesn't have to cover huge amounts of ground. He's like a 10, or he can play off the wide, but he tends to come into little pockets. And for that alone, just because of his ability on the ball and how he can hurt you with passes and vision, and his technique to see things, I would have took a little gamble on him because, like you say, them areas it's short, sharp movements. For me, when you're in them little pockets, it's your little give and goes, it's your body feints. So for me, I would have took a gamble. You're not exactly playing a wing back where he's going to have to cover the most ground on a football pitch up and down, but hey, I'm not an expert, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. Neither am I. I just know a good player when I see one, and he definitely comes across like that. And actually, I saw it was on social media today. There was a clip on of Beckham's goal, and I think it's his mum who's talking, and she says they were behind the goal,
right.
And she said when the ball left his foot. She said the stadium went silent. She said you wouldn't think you were in a football stadium. It was just complete silence. And then obviously it hit the back of the net and it erupted. And one of the funny thing was, after the game, Ferguson had went to Beckham and said, "You, straight on the bus, no interviews, no getting talked to, get on that bus."
That's right, I remember that. I remember that. Do you know why I think people appreciate them goals so much is because when you pick a ball up like that, to look that far in advance with your surroundings, you're looking well beyond the ball. You're looking, yards and yards ahead of the ball. So for me, I think to be able to get the ball, get your head up, scan and see a keeper off his line, then execute it, I think that's why it's so much better than just come to the edge of the box and you just hit it. Because sometimes when you do that, it's sometimes a little bit of potluck, how you catch it. Sometimes you can catch them ones that come to the edge of the box and they fly in the stand. But for that one where you, especially from your own half or in around the centre circle, it's just pure technique. There's no luck really involved. You've got to get the right height. You've got to get the right, weight of it so it doesn't go too high and it just floats over the keeper. And to see it, I think that to be able to see it is the big part.
Yeah, there's so many players, and I think people who didn't play it, obviously you played it at the top level, but people who don't play that much, they don't understand that sort of that ability to get your head up and see what's around you. It's a huge skill. It's a huge skill, and only the top players. That's the reason they're the best at it. There was a clip. Frank Lampard is being coached, and he said that one of the biggest things anyone ever told him was to be looking over your shoulder. And you see, if you watch the top pros, before the ball's anywhere near them, they're scanning everywhere. They're looking all around. So when the ball comes in, they know exactly what's around them. They know where people are. They know if they can take a turn. They know if they can take a touch and stuff, or they've got to play straight off.
Did you see the stat of Vitinha in the Champions League final? So every time he received a ball, every time he received it, he scanned on average, sometimes more, sometimes less, on average, before he received the ball, every single time, 5.5 times. Every single time he received it, it was at least 5.5 times he scanned before he got the ball. That's incredible. Some people say, have a little look over your shoulder before the ball arrives. He was doing that 5 times every single time he got the ball. Incredible.
And people think it's kind of it's just natural that somebody can take a touch and then look up and know where everyone is, but they've already done it. Like you say, Vitinha there's already done it 5 times before that ball's come in. So it's incredible.
Yeah, I always said it. When I was coaching the young lads at Sunderland, I always used to say it to them, like, awareness is probably what will set you apart as to how good you can be as a player. Because when you talk about technique and physically, there's only so much of a difference between one person to another in terms of technique and physicality. But the awareness is what sets the top players apart.
Yeah, I agree.
For me as a coach, it's something I can remind players about it, but I can't, it's something that I can't give them. It's just something that's built within you. Maybe it's how you understand the importance of awareness. I mean, I watch Bruno plays passes. I'm like, how's he seeing that in such a tight area and so quick? His awareness, like, I know people are, some people are having them, some people aren't. Like, I wouldn't care what people say to me about Bruno Fernandes. When I watch him, his awareness is absolutely top draw.
Yeah. And I would never disagree with you on that. But you and I have had this discussion before about Bruno Fernandes. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't think he's a player who can sit in the middle of the park for Manchester United and dominate games.
Yeah,
I guess it's unfair to expect that of someone like Bruno Fernandes because he's never going to be that type of player. Hence the reason to be going and looking at Belabor.
Yeah, and, he's a 10, isn't he, really?
And he's a fantastic player, and he dragged Man United through the past few seasons, really, sometimes being the only real quality they've had. And we'll talk about Man United in a little bit. But no, I think that thing about Bruno Fernandes having him and not having him, I think that's because he's been asked to do things at Man United which he shouldn't have been asked to do. He's never going to be a Roy Keane. There's not many players who can. You've got to have both types, and Man United haven't had the other type of player. They brought in Casemiro, and he's been a great player, and he's still been decent for Man United, but he ain't got the legs to be that player. Ugarte doesn't seem to be that player.
No, Ugarte's hit-y-missy. Some weeks I think, wow, and then other weeks I think, no. So that's, for me, too inconsistent, isn't he?
Yeah, it's some weeks when you're watching, doesn't get close, does he? Doesn't get close to the ball.
No, and then some games he's been man of the match. Like, he's ran the game, he's been everywhere, but I don't know whether does he need more time to settle down, or is it just that's him? He's just not a consistent player, and that happens to a lot of players. Some weeks they're brilliant and some weeks they're not, but you need more, don't you, at Man United? You need 100%. That consistency.
Absolutely, definitely. You do. Absolutely. So, yeah, okay, well, we haven't even started yet, but...
10 minutes in and it's been all Man United.
So, Middlesbrough. Started the championship, got a win under the belt there. Seemed like it was going well, and then they've been smashed in the Carabao Cup. So what do you think there? I'll give you my thoughts, because Sunderland did it last season. Sunderland didn't want anything to do with the Carabao Cup last season. It was all about the league, and they went and got beaten the first round the same, because there's no desire to be sort of distracted by that cup. And I wonder if Middlesbrough have been the same. There's no desire to proceed because it's about the league. It's about getting into the playoffs or getting an auto.
100%. I mean, when you've got a club like that who should be a Premier League club, they've been down there a few years now, and it's getting to the point where, like, the fans are desperate. I just think everyone loves a cup run, and of course you do. I mean, obviously, Newcastle won the Carabao Cup last year. Sunderland had that brilliant run when they got to Wembley. But for me, for Middlesbrough, it's about getting back in the Premiership. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think they've got, like I said to the first podcast we did, where I don't think they've got a big enough squad in terms of like top players to be able to go, right, we'll have a good run in that and we'll get the Premier League. It's a case of prioritising. And unfortunately, the Carabao Cup, as much as it's nice, don't get me wrong, but the Premier League's the one they want. And you're probably right that they're probably glad they're out, if you like.
Yeah. The Carabao Cup is one of them. Like, it's a great thing if you've got the capability to go and have a go at it, like Newcastle did. But if it's something where it's going to strain your squad to go and have a go at it, then that's not something to be competing in. That's going to then distract you from what is your real goal, which is getting back in the Premier League. So I 100% agree. So I'm just looking at the list here, and the last time you and I spoke, there wasn't a single signing in the Borough ranks. And at least now you're looking at Alfie Jones has come in from Hull City, Kante coming from Troyers, Callum Britton's come in from Blackburn, and Hansen's come in from NEC. So at least they've brought some players into the side now. I got to be honest, I know very little about any of those players who they've brought in.
Yeah, I mean the two lads that they've gotten from abroad, from the Dutch league and from the French league too, they've paid 3.5 and 3 million. Now I don't know much about them at all, but I didn't know much about Baleba before Brighton bought him. I didn't know much about the lad who was at Bournemouth who left and went. So Semenyo, nobody had heard of him before Bournemouth got him. Brighton are brilliant at it. They bring lads through that not many people have heard of. So that could turn out to be, both of them could be world beaters. And I just think it's one of them, time will tell. The other lad, Alfie Jones, I've seen, he's just steady. He's a steady Eddie. He's played in the Championship before. Callum Britton, not too sure on, but they're both experienced. They're both 27-year-old. They've played in the Championship before. So it's probably experience. I said to you last time we spoke that they're probably going to throw a few youngsters in, which, that they probably will have to at some point, but they also need that mix of experience. But the two lads, like I said, that getting from abroad, they could be anybody's. They could turn out to be absolute world beaters, or they could turn out to be nobodies. Mind you, I will say the lad they've just sold, the Dutch lad Van den Berg, they bought him for £260,000 and they've just sold him for 11.2 million. So that's good business, and if any of these are good and they end up selling them on for 10, 15, 20 million, but you've got to reinvest it, that's the worry, I think when you get to like where Brighton are, and Brighton are probably a top 6, top 8 club now, their fans kind of know that that's where they are. If they get a cup run on the way, that's brilliant. But they're a merry-go-round of producing players and selling them on. But that keeps them in the league.
If you're a Brighton fan and you know that's the model, like you said, you maybe hope for a cup run, you maybe hope for top 6 or top, whatever the European level drops down to, you maybe hope for a little bit of European football. But beyond that, I don't think that they're after much more. I don't think that they're after sort of, because if they were, then they'd be keeping the likes of João Pedro and Baleba and the rest of them that they sold on during the years there. So what's your sort of final thoughts on the Borough? Then they brought those players in. We don't know much about them. They've took a punt on a couple of European lads. They've got some good people coming through who you named last time. What's your thoughts? Because I genuinely think top 6 was there for them last season. And they kind of fell away at the end, and the side's not as good as them, who ended up sort of getting in there. The Bristol City, Coventry ended up in there with a great run when Lampard went in. But I do think Borough can get top 6 and get into that playoff places. I don't think Auto's there for them.
No. I think if you put a gun to me, Ed, I would say that they'll finish in the top 6. They'll finish in the playoff places, especially I think at home, if they can. I know they only won 1-0 the other day, and I haven't seen the game, but it's the Riverside's a bit of a fortress if you can get the crowd behind you. Like I said last year, they were battering teams in terms of playing football and possession and dominating the ball. If they can turn them into goals, then easily playoffs, and they should be. They're a huge club for the magnitude of the Championship. When you see some of the clubs who are in the Championship now, that their crowds would be probably just below mid-table in terms of attendance in the Premier League.
In the Premier, for sure.
You know what I mean? So, they're a big club.
Overall fan base as well. They've got a big fan base, and they are a big club.
Definitely.
Question on the Championship then, before we move off the Championship. What do you think of Wrexham in the Championship then? Do you think they've got it in them to go again and get promotion again?
Well, it'll be a bit like the Luton story, wasn't it? Where Luton came and had, I think it was four out of 5 successive promotions and got to the Premier League. But they've got the backing to do it. They've got the owners. Again, they're a huge club. The crowds they were getting, even in the National League, were like 12,000 or something. Even when they're in the National League, I mean, it's unheard of. So they are a huge club, and I think they were a sleeping giant, and that's why Ryan Reynolds invested. But so's Hartlepool. Hartlepool are a sleeping giant. I've been to a Hartlepool game. There's been 11,000 there in the National League, and that was only last season.
Yeah.
So I've heard rumours that it was going to be Hartlepool before Wrexham that he was going to buy, but the current Hartlepool owners were asking for more money, and he just turned around and went, "Well, I'll go elsewhere." These sleeping giants, when you get it right, like as shown you, and with the fan base, and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just think it'll be a bridge too far for another promotion for them. But when I seen them 1-0 up in up to 90 minutes the other day, Southampton as well. Southampton just come out the Premier League, who are another big club as well for that level. I was thinking to myself, no way can they go to Southampton on day one and win. 2 90-minute plus goals, man. That's a killer. Yeah.
But that's the Championship.
Of course it is. Yeah,
That's
you've seen it firsthand at Sunderland last year.
Yeah. We lost or drew so many games in those last sort of 10, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was a killer. And if we always talk about this, the guys who I go to the games with, if we hadn't done that and we converted those into points or 3 points, we'd have been top 2.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have needed the playoffs.
Yeah.
But we just dropped so many points in the last few minutes. So, okay, mate, what about top 6 in the Premier League then? If I give you some examples here, so we've got Arsenal, who definitely be pushing again, and Arsenal have brought in Kepa, the keeper, Zubimendi, 51 million, Norgard from Brentford for 15 million, Madueke from Chelsea, 52 million, Mosquera from Valencia, 13 million, and then the big one, Victor Gyökeres, 63.5 million from Sporting. Do you think that gives them enough to push them over the line this time? On the spot question for you.
I think it's going to be the toughest Premier League we've ever had. I think you're going to get past Christmas. I think you're going to get to March, April, and I think there's going to be 4 clubs fighting it out for the Premier League title race. And normally by then it's probably down to 2. I think this year is going to be Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal. I think Chelsea have to be there or thereabouts. The squad they've got, probably my heart telling us over my head here. If Man United get Baleba and maybe Donnarumma, they've got to be there or thereabouts with that squad. When you look at Sesko and Mbeumo, Cunha, Baleba, Donnarumma, they've got to be. And some big players coming back from injury. Luke Shaw barely played all last year. Martinez barely played. De Ligt got injured. Euro looks a totally different player. Dorgu looks a completely different animal. So, yeah, I think Arsenal will be in the top 4. I think they'll be challenging with them signings. I think they will 100% be in the title race come March and April. And then after that, it's down to like the mindset, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't think they've got it. So I think they've kind of, over the past few seasons where they've been close, they also runs, I just don't think they've got enough to get over the line again because of the fact that everyone else has strengthened just as much. So my view is exactly the same, top 4, but not winning it. So I'll just give you a quick one here. We don't have to dwell on it, but Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa have brought in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players, but I've never heard of them, and I genuinely thought Aston Villa might, bring some people in and have a proper go at it with what happened last season. But Ozcan, Redmond, Bizzo, Cisse and Gassand, I've never heard of any of them, and I just don't think they've done enough to be top 6 again this year, if I'm honest.
No, but I must admit, I don't think there's any value in going to another Premier League club for players. It's a disgrace, the amount of money you get charged from Premier League club to Premier League club now. And that's why people go elsewhere to get value. The reason, obviously, they do cost so much club to club is because they're proven on there. They're proven in the Premier League. And when you're not, it's a bit of a gamble. So that's why the price isn't as high. But I think if you're bringing 5 or 6 players in like Villa is, I don't think Villa's got the money to be spending Premier to Premier and getting 50, 60, 70 million per player. Whereas they go abroad and they can get 5 good players. Well, there could be good players for a third of the price, really.
But it's a punt. It's a punt, isn't it?
It is. It is a punt, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And again, time will tell, I suppose. There's been loads of players that have come through. Nobody had heard of Mbeumo. Nobody had really heard of Cunha. Norgard, Damsgaard, the kid who went to Real Madrid. Huijsen, Dejan Huijsen.
Yeah, that was out the blue, that one. I was kind of surprised when he was off from Bournemouth to Real.
So where have all these players come from? And they've turned out to be proper world-class players. Semenyo, Evan Nielsen. Nobody had ever heard of them. But these clubs haven't got the money to be going to Premier to say, can we have him? So they have to take that punt on maybe he's going to Brazil or into Portugal or into Spain or Holland. But some will work and some will won't. And I just think it's a case of, time will tell. We could be watching Match of the Day in 3 weeks' time, and two of them players you could be saying, did you see the goal by so-and-so from Villa? Wow, what a player he is. But yeah.
Very true. So top six or not?
No, not for me, not for Villa, no.
Okay. Chelsea, let's do Chelsea. So Chelsea, Jamie Gittins from Dortmund, 51.5 million. João Pedro from Brighton, 60 million. Liam Delap, Ipswich, 30 million. Heato from Ajax, 38.5. Willian from Palmeiras, 29 million. Isugo, 18.5 million. Sarr, 12 million. And Pease, 17.3 million. So they brought a lot of people in, with the big ones really being, as far as I can see, the big ones being Jamie Gittins and João Pedro.
Yeah.
Are the big names they've brought in. I know Delap's sort of gone for 30 million, but he's still unproven, Delap. He hasn't really done it yet.
No.
I think it's a good shout, but I'm just not sure. So what do you think of Chelsea? You've said Chelsea top four. Do you think Chelsea are in that group of people challenging at that later time there?
I mean, obviously, if you watch them in the World Club Championship final, 100%. The proper took it to PSG and convincingly beat them. The squad's brilliant. They've got strength and depth. I said it a couple of years ago, Chelsea, and they were buying all these players and stuff, but it wasn't gelling. And I thought to myself, a couple of years' time, it will. When they've brought in João Pedro looks a proper number 9. I watched him closely in that World Club Championship, and his ability to run the channels but then look after it, he's a handful, but he can play as well.
And score goals. He's a good goal scorer as well.
100%. And that Gittins, wow, he looks top draw, him. He does look the real deal. So I think top four, but I also think come March and April, I think they'll be in the hunt. I really do. And I'm just probably going off the World Club Championship. What I see now was very impressive. They've got Cole Palmer. Wow. One of the best players in the world at the minute.
But I did read this week that Man City are readying a world record bid for Cole Palmer to bring him back to the club of £250 million release clause or something with Chelsea. Now, that could just be complete fabrication. It's all, you never know what to believe these days on social media. But I guess if Man City want him and they go and try and get him, there is a number where Chelsea go, we've got to let him go.
Well, do you know my thoughts on Sonny? And I'm being really serious. He's a massive, massive Man United fan. He's from, obviously, that area. He's a huge Man United fan. I think in a year or two's time, I think you'll see him in a Man United shirt without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, you heard it here first, if that happens.
100%. When you support somebody like that and you're like a Man United fan, the chance to play for them, it takes over.
Yeah.
It takes over. Imagine him.
It's interesting, Stu, because the players, Mbeumo and Cunha and Sesko, who turned down other clubs, turned down bigger offers, turned down more wages. In fact, the Sesko reduced his wage demands and his agent reduced their fee so he could join Man United instead of Newcastle. And we'll talk about Newcastle in a little bit because that's just not a good story at all, really. But all three of them have said they've dreamed of pulling on the Man United shirt.
I was speaking to a scout on Saturday. I won't name his name because he works for another club. And he's not a Man United fan, but we were talking about Baleba and Sesko and Cunha and Mbeumo. And he just turned around, he went, even though they had the worst season ever and they haven't won the Premier League for however many years, he went, I'm telling you now, he went, Manchester United are still the biggest football club in the world. Fact. And some people who listen to they'd be like, shut up. But they are. I don't care what anybody says, they're still the biggest club in world football. The opportunity to play for Manchester United at the Theatre of Dreams with 75,000 people there every single week and the history of the club that they've had, it's still the biggest club in the world. And I think this transfer window has completely proven that.
I agree. I think it has proven that they've still got the pull without European football to bring in top names. And it's the project, isn't it? That's what people talk about.
Yeah.
It's the project. And if you're hammering and you're Jim Ratcliffe and you're selling the project and you're selling the history of Manchester United and you're selling the future of Manchester United, it feels like it's quite an easy sell, if I'm being honest with you, unless you're going just for the money. And that's a different story altogether. So let's go on to Liverpool and mate. So Liverpool, Kirkes, 40 million. We are Florian Wirtz, one of the biggest signings in history there, 116 million. Frimpong, 29.5. Can't even say the next one. Mamadashvili, 29 million. Ekatike, 79 million. Pesci, 1.5 million, and Freddie Woodman on a free from Preston there. So without going into the Isaac thing, which we'll do straight after this, we'll do Liverpool and then Isaac. Liverpool, what's your view? Because they've brought in some good players.
Again, they'll be up there without a doubt. And obviously, they won it last year when everybody had probably the worst season they've all had in a lot of years, and they were at it, and they deserve to win it. I think they've made too many changes. If I'm being perfectly honest, you win a league, and then all of a sudden you lose. Núñez has gone abroad. Diaz has gone. Robertson's out of favour. McAllister looks out of favour. Trent Arnold's gone. So all of a sudden now, you've got about 5 or 6 different players who need to come into that starting 11, and it has to gel. And I didn't watch the Community Shield, but I've spoke with a few people, and they said Liverpool look good going forward. Of course they did, but they look very, very open. And Crystal Palace created them so many problems, and that didn't really happen last year. You know, it looked as though you could never score against them.
Do you think that's why they've gone straight in for the Gahey thing, trying to get that one over the line after the Charity Shield? That seems to have picked up a bit of traction.
Possibly, yeah. You know, Van Dijk, as much as he's another year older, you know, them years creep by and playing at the top level. Frimpong looks a right winger who's been converted to a right back, but apparently there was absolutely acres down his side in the game because he wants to get forward. Well, isn't that what the problem was with Trent Arnold? He couldn't defend. And now they've put another player in there who can't defend and is a right winger by really the way he plays. So I just don't get it. I just think this year alone, I think they've made too many changes. I think it'll take them a season or two for them 4 or 5 players to gel and get into I think it's proven every year when new players come to the Premier League, they're always better in the second and third seasons. And I think it'll take them a season. They'll be up there, but I don't think they'll win it. Not this year.
I saw a phrase that said, "Well done, Liverpool. You've won the most boring Premier League ever." Because it wasn't a challenging season, was it? Even Man City dropped off the pace and were losing game. Went on a bit of a losing run, and it was the only time I've ever seen Pep look dishevelled during that 100%. Run there. He was you could see the stress was getting to him a little bit.
He had marks on his head, didn't he? Where he was scratching himself and stuff.
And that, it just shows that when you're winning, you know, it's fantastic. But even the best managers in the world can go through that little period where they're not winning and the stress gets to them and stuff like that. So I'm the same as you. I don't think Liverpool win it again. It isn't going to be as comfortable a season as it was last season for anybody. Everyone's strengthened. The top clubs have strengthened it. I think the top 10's a hard ask this year, if I'm honest. You've said it already. Hard Premier League this season. So I'm just going to draw a comparison here between what happened with Trent and how Liverpool fans treat him at the end when he left. And he was, he was vilified, wasn't he? It was horrendous. And then they're very comfortable to go and do the very same thing to another club and try to push through this Isak thing. And Isak's behaviour is horrendous, in my opinion. Far worse than Trent's. Far worse behaviour than Trent's. I've read, and again, don't know if this is true, but I've read that he's sort of packed up and moved out of his house in Newcastle that he was renting, and he's told them he'll never play for the club again to try to force through this move. The issue I've got with it all is that where does it stop? Let's say he gets his way and Newcastle go, we're going to have to sell him here. He's forcing his way, we're going to have to sell him. Another player, let's say it's Bruno Guimaraes or it's Joe Linton or it's one of the other players go as well. I'll just do the same when I want away. I'll just refuse to play for the club and I'll get my big move whenever I want to go. So I think Newcastle are in a bit of a situation here where they really need to deal with this carefully.
Definitely. I mean, if you look at his contract, if you noticed, he hasn't handed a transfer request in, because I think the way it works is any bonuses that he's due, if he's had, say, let's say for instance, he's getting 10 million signing on fee when he signed his Newcastle contract, but he's getting that over 3 or 4 years, so it's 500 grand or $1 million 1 year, 500 grand or $1 million the next 500. If he hands a transfer request in, what'll happen is that they'll just void his bonuses that he's due because he's handed in a transfer request. So the box clever. That's why if you notice, there hasn't been a transfer request. All he's doing is sitting, keeping quiet, letting the clubs kind of go to and fro. But yeah, I mean, he's at a huge club at Newcastle. Newcastle took a punt on him. Newcastle have turned Alexander Isak into what he is, because he wasn't this before he signed for Newcastle, by the way.
Agreed.
So, this is where I think my dad said on the first podcast, like Jamie Vardy said, he would never, at his prime, he would never have signed for another club other than Leicester, when he could have, because Leicester gave him an opportunity. So he was loyal. But there's not many of them about, Sonny. There's not many loyal players about. And for him to do what he's done to Newcastle in terms of all of a sudden, there's a big club after him, and now he's a bit of a superstar because he had a good season with Newcastle. For him to do what he's done, I think it's an absolute disgrace. Do you know what I would do? I would say no to Liverpool, and I would sell him to the Saudis, and I would say you can go and play your football over there, just to cheese him off. And you can't sell him to Liverpool. They're the Premier League title holders. Like, that's just ridiculous.
The one thing Newcastle have got in their favour, really, is the fact that the owners of the club are sitting in Saudi Arabia with more money than you could even comprehend, and trying to be threatened by a player and his agent, as in, let me go, or I won't play for the club again. They won't particularly care that he's worth X. Now the club might want to just put an end to the saga and move him on, but I don't think the owners are sitting there worried about the money. I really don't. And it might be the one time the club is strong enough to say, do you know what, mate, you've acted horrendously, you're going nowhere. At some point you'll come back with your tail between your legs begging to play for this club again. And until that time you can sit in the reserves, you can train on your own, whatever. Or like you said, we're going to loan you out to the Saudis, and you're going to go and play over there for 6 months, and we'll see you at the winter break.
Aye. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, you've got somebody like him, and you just make him kind of play in the ones or do whatever, but it's a hell of a lot of money because it'd be on good wages, there's no doubt about it. So from a business point of view, and I know you're saying money isn't a problem to them, and it isn't, but you're still paying somebody all that money and not getting your value from them, which is scoring goals for your club. So it's a real difficult one, but I would honestly, I would just say, I would hold out and say no to Liverpool. Keep saying no. If they keep coming back with more and more bids, and if you get up to 150 million, fair enough. 150 million, go and reinvest every single penny on. You probably get 3 or 4 very, very good players for that amount of money, and see you later, Isaac, and we're getting 150 million for you. Because I tell you what, 150 million is a lot of money to live up to. I don't care what anybody says.
I'm not sure you can. Unless you're Messi and people like that. You've seen it in the past, the players who went for big, big money, your Gareth Bales of this world and things like that, who never really lived up to that price tag. It almost became too much for him to live up to. Neymar never really lived up to the price tag. It's too much. No. It's too much expectation, too much on your shoulders, and too much to go and deliver to those new fans who are expecting, a goal or a couple of goals every week, because we just paid £150 million for you there.
Do you know what I don't get, Sonny? Like, he's at Newcastle, a huge club who, like I said earlier, they've turned him into what he is today. He's the most wanted number 9 in the world, because Newcastle took a bit of I wouldn't say a punt, but he wasn't a superstar before he went to Newcastle. Yeah, he was a potential lad, and all of a sudden he's banging the goals in the Premier League. He's making Van Dijk look silly at times when they played them last year. Newcastle's won the first trophy in 70 years. They've getting Champions League. The fans are mad on a Saturday. 55,000 screaming Geordies. Why wouldn't you go? Let's have a go this year. Let's stay one more year, see what happens, and then if Liverpool come in or whoever comes in for us, then we can sit down and we can talk. But when you're coming off the back of your best ever season for Newcastle fans, it's just a kick in the teeth for them, isn't it, really, when after that year they're now coming back to this debacle of what's gone on in the transfer window with their best player. It's sad for them. I'm a bit gutted for Newcastle fans, if I'm being honest. Like,
I'm gutted for Eddie Howe because he's a good manager, he's a good lad.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the agents have got a lot to answer for as well, because, agents, the Haaland thing, I heard a story the other day. I think Haaland was only going to cost about 40 or 50 million from Dortmund, but it was the agent who was wanting the other 40, 50 million in his kind of deal. And a lot of clubs were like, no, I'm not paying an agent 40 or 50 million. And Man City were like, yeah, we'll give you 40 million and we'll give 40 million for Haaland. And I wouldn't say they took a punt, but they knew what they were probably going to get with Haaland. So 80 million for Haaland, 40 to the agent and 40 for Haaland, or 50 for Haaland, whatever it was. It was a gamble that paid off.
Yeah.
Probably the similar things happening with Isak. Clubs are probably saying, listen, we'll give you agent 20 million if you can get the deal over the line. And that's the way the world works now. Agents have got a lot to answer for because they know they're going to be getting the big bucks. So they'll be saying to them, listen, hold out. I'll get 20 million. Out of that 20 million, I'll give you an extra 10.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I think I told you off the camera that I've got a friend whose father is a well-known football writer and has previously been involved with clubs and getting information about transfers and stuff like that. So he's the old school Fabrizio Romano. And I won't mention any names but I might try to get him. I am trying to get him on a future show. This guy, he's still involved. He's still a writer for a newspaper and all that type of stuff. So he says he would get calls from agents saying, look, write an article, put it in your paper, put it wherever, that these clubs are after my player because he wants to move. So if you write that, these three clubs are after him, that'll alert some other clubs that he might be available and we'll get a bit of interest. So, and what my mate said was his dad would get gifts from either the player or the agent. So he'd get a few quid, write an article saying, Man United are after Joe Blogs, and then all of a sudden other clubs are on high alert, or his own club are thinking, we best keep this lad. It's horrendous, really.
It is. It's typical sport, isn't it? Wherever there's high money involved, it's, I wouldn't say corrupt, but it's not far off, when there's big bucks involved.
Right. Okay, mate. We're starting to get a bit tight on time here, so let's quickly go through the rest. In Man City this season,
100%, they'll be there or thereabouts. I think Pep hurt last year with what happened with him. They've made some good signings, and Rodri's back. That's worth 10 players. Never mind just one. He's that good. So I think they're 100%. They'll be challenging for the title come April and May time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lift it again, because that's what Pep's all about.
Yeah, he's got the pedigree. And again, we talked about Arsenal. Man City know what it takes to get over the line, and that's the difference, isn't it?
I think he's that type of person that will have hurt him last year massively. Will have hurt him, and knowing how he works, I think in terms of watching him in the past, that bounce back ability, you can just see it. He's driven with it, isn't he? So yeah,
perfect. So here we go. Then let's move on to Man United. So obviously Mbeumo, Cunha, Diogo Leon, Benjamin Sesko, and the potential of Baleba, Donnarumma. Now I think they finish it off for Man United. I do think the keeper's a big problem for them.
Huge.
I think without fixing that, I think they're going to struggle again. And I also think that, as we talked about earlier on in this show, that central midfielder who can dominate the game is what they've been missing. And I've seen what that Baleba can do. I've been watching a few clips of him. So if they do that, let's say two questions for you. One, as it is now, Man United go into the season, they don't make any more signings. What does that look like? And if they bring in Baleba, Donnarumma, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think currently without them two, I think you'd be happy with Champions League if you can get into the top six and have one of the good cup runs. I think that would be successful. I think with Baleba and with Donnarumma, two huge positions for Man United in terms of the goalkeeper, how many points he cost Man United last year just alone off silly mistakes, and Baleba's ability for his legs to be able to get about the park, but also his attributes of he's a bit press resistant. You try to press him high and he's so good at getting out of tight situations and flipping the high press into a counter-attack. He's so good at that when I've watched the clips. Then combine that with the players they've signed. So currently, I think without them, I think I'd be looking at probably Champions League top six would be. I'd be really happy with top six. Don't think we'll challenge for the title. With them, I honestly think there's a little outside chance that we could be there or thereabouts. I even spoke to my dad yesterday, and he said I think they're something like 40. You can get 40 odd to 1 for them to win the Premier League. I mean, that's unheard of for Man United. And he said, Stu, I'm gonna have 100 quid on it. He was joking, but I think there was an element of at least sticks a little daft fiver on them, hoping that Belabor and Donnarumma come, But yeah, I think if they get them, and I think they will, if I'm being honest, I think they will get them. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. A lot of people are still writing them off. I listened to Alan Shearer's podcast where Mika Richards and Gary Lineker, and they had them top 10. I think they'd be happy with top 10. And I'm like, no, man. Do you know how good these players are that they've brought in? These players are top players. So, yeah, I think if we get them, I think we'll be, come May, I think we'll be sitting going, come on. But I think without them, I'd be happy with top 6.
So, let's call this out right now. Gary Lineker, Alan Shearer, Micah Richards, on your podcast, you're saying Man United top 10, might not do very well. Pick Yakka Crack podcast, Gates podcast, we're saying Man United there or thereabouts next season if they get Belabor and Donnarumma. We think they're in with a shout. We think they're in 100%. With a shout. So let's see, come the end of the season, let's have a podcast off with the rest is football. I think it's called, isn't it? Their one.
It is, yeah.
And we'll see where we get to. And if we win, we'll call them out on social media, see if we can get a response from them.
No, I say if we win, they have to come on our podcast.
I like it. Let's do it. And give us some of their sponsorships.
100%. And they can take us out for a night out, Sunk.
I like that as well. I like that. That Lineker's got a few quid.
Aye, has he?
So Newcastle, Elanga, Cordera, Ramsdale, which is a bit of an odd one for me, if I'm being perfectly honest. And Thiaw, they've just brought in a defender, having the Malik Thiaw from AC Milan, £34.5 million. They've had about 8 players who really turned them down, didn't want to come to the club. They've got the Isaac situation going on. It's been a horrendous transfer window, and I think the club have let them down. Where do you think Newcastle finish next season?
I just think with the clubs around them in them fighting positions for the positions that they were in last year, I think the other clubs have strengthened really well. If I was a Newcastle fan, knowing what we've just spoke about there in terms of Isak and not having a very good transfer window, I would probably top 10. I think they'll finish in the top 10. I can't see them getting Champions League. I can't see them challenging for trophies again. But I think top 10. Obviously, it's hard to go to Newcastle. Even without Isak, it's still a tough place to go. But yeah, that's my prediction this year. I don't think it's been a great transfer window for them. I'm predicting top 10.
My prediction is they won't get top 6. I think they'll be pushing to be in there, but I think they'll falter at the end of the day, and I don't think they'll get top 6. But I think they'll be just outside of that top 6. I just don't think they've strengthened enough from really doing really well and finishing where they did last season. Another good season, really winning the cup and getting Champions League football. I just don't think they've then progressed. In fact, for me, it feels like they've gone a little back over, if I'm perfectly honest with you, with who they brought in. Elanga, this is just my opinion. People have their own. I don't think Elanga is particularly a top 6 player. I don't think the top 6 clubs, any of the other top clubs, weren't interested in Anthony Elanga. Man United let him go. He had a good season at Forest, and then the other guy, Ramsdale's a bit, like I say, Ramsdale's an odd one for a club like Newcastle to be bringing Ramsdale in.
Well, I think the fans aren't having Nick Pope. I speak to a lot of them lads I work with, and that they're just not having him. He can't play with his feet. He's a good shot stopper. They can't go to that next level of dominating the ball and starting again and playing out from the back. When they've got him, they just can't. He can't kick a ball. He's a great shot stopper, like I said, but he's not great with his feet. And I think that's probably why they've went and brought Ramsdale in.
But he makes so many mistakes with his feet, Ramsdale. That was one of the biggest criticisms of him the last time he was in the Premier League. He was his shot-stopping ability, like Nick Pope, his shot-stopping ability was second to none. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
But then, and he is decent with his feet when he's got time to take it down and try to pick someone out. He's decent. But when there's a bit of pressure on, he made so many mistakes that he ended up having to move on. And I just fear that they've brought someone in who's going to be the next Andre Onana for Newcastle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a difficult one, I think, to pick who you're gonna start in terms of the both top keepers in their own respect, aren't they? But, if I was Nick Pope, and I got outed as number one for Ramsdale, I'd be disappointed. And if I'm Ramsdale coming in and I'm not number one, I'm going to be disappointed. I think the kind of neck and neck. But for me, one of them's going to be unhappy sitting on the bench.
And I guess it's good that you're unhappy to sit on the bench, because we both know players that have gone and sat on the bench and, picked up the wage every week and couldn't give a stuff, really,
100%. Yeah.
Whether they were on the bench or not. Newcastle, we've said you think top 10, I think just outside the top 6, but I certainly don't think they're in the top 6. If we move on to Sunderland, I mean, Sunderland, again, it may be that's just too much change, as you called out earlier on. But Granit Xhaka, Simon Adringa, Diarra, Enzo Lafay, Noah Siddiqui, Reinildo, Talbi, Robin Roofs, Mark Giu, Omar Alderete. Now, let me just tell you a couple of things here. Granit Xhaka was on the list for the Ballon d'Or last year. Omar Alderete was in the La Liga team of the season. So they've got two really good players there.
Mm-hmm.
Habib Diarra, I think, is going to be a superstar, and that's just my opinion. Simon Adringa's a proven in the Premier League. Enzo Lafay I saw last season, and it's not going to be as easy for him in the Premier League, but he's a good player. I've seen Talbi, and then I've watched this Robin Roofs, this new keeper, and he looks a real good keeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, I know we've talked about being just outside the bottom 3. As long as you're outside the bottom 3, it's a good season. But when you're bringing in players like that, and there's rumours that they're bringing in a Premier League proven player and might start at the weekend. Now, I don't know who this is. It's an experienced centre forward, apparently. Calvert-Lewin's going to Leeds, so it's definitely not Calvert-Lewin. Is it Jamie Vardy? Is it Danny Welbeck? But apparently someone's coming in. I'm now looking and thinking, and maybe again you said the phrase earlier on, sort of thinking with your heart and not your head, but maybe Sunderland can have a go at trying to get close to that top 10. Now, I'm not saying they break into that top 10 because it's a really tough Premier League this season, but I don't think Sunderland will be floating around that bottom 3. I think the players they brought in are good players, and I think they might be sort of pushing towards the top 10 rather than fighting against the bottom 3.
Yeah, I think when you look at the players they've brought in, and the levels they've already played at, if that ability to be able to gel together quickly can come to the fore, I think 100% they can get up to that near that mid-table zone. Granit Xhaka's a top player. I always liked him. Robin Roofs, again, another one that I've heard's very, very good. I've seen Talbi played in the Champions League for Club Brugge last year. Adingra, like you said, caused problems in the Premier League. Diarra was brilliant for Senegal against England. Scored one of the goals. So these players they're bringing in are like, proper top-end players. For a Sunderland fan, it must be mad to see the transfer window that they've had compared to the last 10 years when it's been nowhere near that. They've been relying on loans from other clubs. They've been buying lads from Ireland or, getting free transfers. So for how much have they spent in the transfer window this
think
summer?
It's currently like 130 million.
Wow.
And they're still not done, apparently. So,
for a club like Sunderland, that's like, it's unbelievable, and again, another huge club, another sleeping giant in terms of where they've been over the last few years, with Sunderland fans all around us in terms of family and friends. It'd be just amazing for them to just make, have a good start to the season and know that you look secure in terms of, you're not, after 6 or 7 games, you're in bottom 3 and you've not got many points. Because then it just becomes a little bit like, oh, here we go again, we're back down. If you can just look as though you're going to be up there in terms of top end of the bottom half of the table, then that would be amazing, I think, for Sunderland fans. And I think, like you say, the players they've just named, and some amazing signings, there's nothing stopping them getting up there,
There isn't. I mean, I was talking to my mate about this at the weekend gone there. If you think about it, when Newcastle brought in the likes of Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton and players like that who've become really, really top players, you weren't looking at them thinking, oh, they've brought in a superstar.
No.
At that point. No. And that's turned out to be the case, but they certainly weren't household names when they brought them in. So, and I think some of these players they're not all going to work. There's too many of them there for them all to work. But if you got a few of them there really kicked on, and then they've announced today that Xhaka's been given the captaincy, so it's been taken from Dan Neil, and I feel for Dan a little bit because he's been great for the club and he's a boyhood Sunderland fan, ball boy, all that type of stuff, and It's been taken from I don't know if he's vice captain. I don't know what the situation is. I just feel for him a little bit. But you're talking about the lad, Yakka there, hugely experienced player, captains Switzerland, who are actually a good international side. It does make sense. It does make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. It's heartbreaking for Dan. Like I said, it's, you know, I coached him when he was younger. He's an unbelievable player. He's an unbelievable lad. And honestly, I do feel sorry for him. But when you look at it, that's football, and you know, that Premier League's that next step. You know, so the manager's got to do what he's got to do. And if he thinks Yakka's the right man to marshal them around the pitch, and that's what he has been at every club he's been at. He's been that central figure of, you know, captaincy, like you say. You know, he was a mainstay at Arsenal at one point. He's captain of Switzerland, you know, hugely talented player, tough, you know, and moving forward, that's what they, you know, Regis Lebris thinks that's the right man to take them forward. And ultimately, that's it's an evil world sometimes in football, because you do everything you can. It's cutthroat, and you do what you can. And Dan's done everything in his powers to get them back to the Champions League. And then all of a sudden, it's like, right, we need that captaincy off you for somebody else. You know, again, for Dan, it's an opportunity to play in the Premier League. You know, he would have snapped your hand off 4 or 5 years ago, you know, when he was 18, 19-year-old, if somebody just said, you're going to be with Sunderland in the Premier League, you know. So he's just got to, I think for Dan, he is that type of player. He believes in himself, and he'll just wait to get his opportunity. And when he does get his opportunity, he'll perform to the best of his ability, you know. And I hope to God he can in the Premier League, and I hope he does really well. Like I said, he's a top player and a top person as well.
And I think having the quality around him will bring Dan on again. Because if you think the past few seasons, Dan hasn't had that much other quality around him to bring him on as a player. And I now think, you know, with the lads he's brought in with Diarra and Siddiqui and Granit Xhaka in the midfield and Enzo Lafay, I do think Dan can really benefit from that. He's only a young kid, really. And I do think he'll get better and better, Dan, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I watched a lot of games last year. I was at a couple of games with you at the Stadium of Light live. And I think I came out, and when we went to the pub after, I said, yeah, for me, he was the best player on the pitch. You know, his ability to keep the ball, see passes. When you talk about awareness, that's his game. You know, again, has he got that athleticism to play in the Premier League? Time will tell. But when you talk about knowledge of the game and ability to keep the ball and pass the ball, he's top draw. You know, and I hope he can get the opportunity to prove that. You know.
So just before we finish, then let's do top 3, bottom 3. So I'll go first, and in no particular order. You don't have to say who's going to win the league, but just top. You know, who's going to be in the top 3, who's going to be in the bottom 3. I think it's Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea. Top 3 for me. I think they've strengthened incredibly well. I think unless, as you and I have already called out on here, unless Man United can finish what they've started and bring in Baleba and Donnarumma, and then I think Man United push themselves in there. I really do. Bottom 3, unfortunately, I don't think Leeds have strengthened particularly well. And I don't think Burnley have really done that much in the window. So I can see them two really struggling. And then I really start to worry about Brentford. When you look at Brentford losing Mbeumo, and I think they're going to lose Wissa. I think he's going to end up at Newcastle before the transfer window closes, and that might be the nail in the coffin for Brentford. So I'm going to go Brentford, Leeds, Burnley, and I'm going to go Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, with the caveat on Baleba and Donnarumma. So over to you, mate.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Man City, Liverpool and Arsenal, as it currently stands, without Baleba and Donnarumma, because we don't know. So at the minute, again, going to me head, I'm going Arsenal, not in any order, Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool as your top 3. And my bottom 3, I'm going to go for, I think Burnley will go back down. I think Brentford will, because I think they've lost too many players. And I think Wolves will, Sonny. I think Wolves have...
Interesting.
They've let Cunha go. They've floated around for too many years now. They've let Cunha go. There's talks of that Strand Larsen. Newcastle was supposed to be interested in him. He could go. And I just think Cunha was that big for them. So I'm going to go Wolves, Brentford and Burnley as my 3.
Perfect. Here's a challenge out to the rest of this football. Do your top 3, do your bottom 3, and let's have another review by the end of the season. Let's get that out there.
100%. Who knows the most about footy?
All right. Well, thanks very much, mate. Thanks to everyone for listening.
Spot on. Yeah.
And we'll catch up with you next time. So cheers, bud.
And thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Cheers.